drug tests for both. Trump and Biden before the debate for fairness. Trump and Biden both need drug tests before debates. The debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, moderated by CNN, will take place on the evening of June 27th in Atlanta. This event promises to be a grand show where the opposing policy views of the two candidates could sway voter opinions and impact the final outcome. Don't forget to grab your popcorn. Recently, Dr. Ronnie Jackson, a former White House physician, suggested that Biden should undergo drug tests before this debate. Specifically, the former White House doctor argued that the current president of the United States should be tested for drugs before and after the debate to ensure he is not a superhero using performance-enhancing drugs to mask his supposed declining cognitive health. Dr. Jackson further stated that he had reasons to believe President Biden might use neurostimulants to enhance his mental sharpness during the upcoming debate. Dr. Jackson, now a Republican congressman representing Texas, expressed suspicion that President Biden had used drugs before his State of the Union address in March. It's a shame, as a former White House doctor, to have to do something like this, but we have no other choice, he said. Currently, I will request on behalf of millions of concerned Americans that he undergo drug tests before and after this debate, particularly for performance-enhancing drugs. Dr. Jackson has repeatedly sent letters to the White House requesting the president undergo cognitive tests to prove his mental fitness for the job. However, President Biden and his staff have ignored these requests. Meanwhile, Dr. Jackson personally administered such a test to Donald Trump in 2019, and the then-president passed it with flying colors. Biden is expected to spend a week at the presidential retreat at Camp David in Maryland to prepare for the debate. Dr. Jackson believes part of the reason for the president's prolonged absence from the White House is that his aides are adjusting the dosages of the medications he will use on debate night. He said, "They have to treat his cognition, give him something to help him think more clearly, keep him alert, and then he gets overexcited. We always see that, and it's a common symptom of the cognitive disorder he seems to have. So maybe they will give him something to deal with that as well." Not only did Dr. Jackson suggest drug testing for President Biden before the debate, but his opponent, former President Donald Trump, also called for drug tests for the incumbent president. Speaking at a meeting on June 22nd in Philadelphia, Trump joked that Biden was sleeping at Camp David to rest up for the debate. Trump told the crowd they want to make him sharp and strong, so a little bit before the debate, he'll be injected in the rear. I say he'll come out all fired up, right? It's all been activated. Back in April this year, Trump said Biden needed to use these neurostimulants to get through his State of the Union address. At that time, when Biden had not yet agreed to debate Trump, the former president still said Biden needed drug tests before any future debates. Trump said, "I watched the State of the Union. At first, he seemed very excited, but by the end, he quickly faded. Something is going on." Trump also brought up the scandal from 2023 when the Secret Service found a bag of cocaine at the White House, suggesting Biden had been getting some help and was using it regularly. A plastic bag containing cocaine was found in a phone locker in the West Wing of the White House on July 2nd, 2023. After an 11-day investigation, the Secret Service closed the case, concluding that there was no evidence to identify the owner of the drugs. This move sparked outrage among Biden's critics. Many believed the cocaine might belong to Hunter Biden, the president's son, who admitted to struggling with substance abuse. The White House officially denied any involvement by the Biden family in the case and praised the thorough investigation by the Secret Service. Senator Tom Cotton remarked at the time, "Someone left cocaine in one of the most secure buildings on the planet, and the Secret Service quickly determined they couldn't find the culprit. No serious person believes this explanation." In response to the drug test proposals, the president's re-election campaign strongly denied any drug use by the president, calling Trump's accusations a bizarre outburst. Previous surveys indicated that most voters were concerned about the mental abilities of both Trump and Biden. A poll conducted by the Nork Center for Public Affairs Research in April showed that 63% of American voters did not believe Biden had the mental capacity to serve effectively as president, and 57% said the same about Trump. Last month, many thought former President Donald Trump would be continually attending trials in various states in the months leading up to the presidential election as prosecutions moved forward. Currently, Trump has been found guilty by a grand jury in the case of hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels in New York. The judge is expected to sentence him on July 11th, and the former president plans to appeal. Meanwhile, 3 other prosecutions have yet to set trial dates, and it is uncertain whether any trials will occur before the election. These cases involve allegations of mishandling classified documents, efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results, and election interference in Georgia. If Trump is re-elected in November, it would complicate the 2 federal prosecutions, as he could appoint a new attorney general who might dismiss the indictments. The Justice Department would also find it challenging to prosecute a sitting president, and it is unclear whether courts would agree to try the president for state charges. But if any case goes before a grand jury, Trump would sit at the defense table in a completely different position than in New York. He would be a convicted felon, facing harsher penalties than a first-time offender. Ted Lopresti, a legal consultant in the U.S., said they would consider his criminal history as a factor in sentencing. Trump's legal team has so far successfully delayed trial dates, and this strategy has been effective in Florida, where he faces federal charges for mishandling documents after leaving the White House. Judge Aileen M. Cannon canceled the trial originally scheduled for May and postponed it indefinitely. Cannon allowed pretrial motions to be filed and planned to spend the summer holding hearings on efforts to reduce or dismiss the charges, making a pre-election trial in November unlikely. Legal experts believe that among the 3 prosecutions, the federal case in Washington, where Trump is accused of conspiring to overturn the election results, obstructing the election process, and conspiring to deprive voters of their rights, is the most likely to be tried before the general election. The case is on hold while the Supreme Court considers Trump's claim of absolute immunity from prosecution for actions taken while he was in office, and thus the indictment should be dismissed. The Supreme Court is expected to decide this month or early July. If the justices agree that Trump can be prosecuted, the Washington case will resume pretrial preparations. In Georgia, where Trump and 14 others face state charges of election fraud related to efforts to overturn the election results in the state, prosecutors and defendants are awaiting a Court of Appeals decision on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis can remain on the case. Willis got into trouble after being discovered having a romantic relationship with a lawyer she had hired as lead prosecutor in the case. The Georgia Court of Appeals is not expected to hear the case until the end of summer, and a ruling is unlikely before the end of 2024 or early 2025. The trial of Trump will not begin until the appeals court makes a decision. Additionally, the Georgia case could be affected by the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity. If the justices decide Trump has immunity, defense lawyers will almost certainly use that in the Georgia case. However, if Trump has to stand trial in any of these 3 prosecutions, many defense attorneys warn that the New York conviction could impact his ability to defend himself. Lawyers always argue that allowing a client to represent themselves is risky, but Trump has not ruled out the option. If Trump does represent himself, prosecutors could use the New York conviction to argue that his statements are not credible. The U.S. legal system has sentencing guidelines where defendants are assigned points based on their criminal history and personal characteristics. These points serve as a basis for judges to determine appropriate sentences. The higher the points, the harsher the penalty. Lawyers say Trump could be assigned 1 point for being convicted in New York. If he is sentenced to at least 60 days in prison, he would receive an additional 2 points. But this is unlikely given his age and lack of prior criminal history. Judges will also assess personal characteristics, such as whether Trump respects court orders and shows remorse. Judges typically follow these sentencing guidelines, though they have the discretion to decide independently of them. Lawyers say they are genuinely interested in your criminal history, personal characteristics, and the circumstances of your crime to see if those factors will increase or mitigate your sentence.